So James and I aren't really from an AI background, although we're quite engaged in it and interested in it these days. We're from a crypto background. We came from technology, then got into crypto and formed a community called Blockchain Manchester. Then we went to build on a blockchain consultancy, a lot like Matt and Tom have done in their thing they were really interested in. But because crypto's dead, we're all into AI now.
We're the only crypto bros left in Manchester.
Yeah, but we found something that mixes the two greatest technologies. And you did see earlier I was part of the new OpenClaw Manchester scene. So I found something as dangerous as crypto in AI. So if you want to come to that meetup, it's next week. But yeah, me and James from a tech background worked in Manchester a lot. And
Yeah, we're definitely not AI engineers, but we are crypto engineers, and we've been building crypto tech for nearly 10 years. So hopefully we know that side of the problem space, but we definitely don't know the in-depth detail as AI as you guys do. But hopefully you'll learn a little bit about this sort of blend between the crypto space and the AI space, specifically around how agents could, in theory, make payments using crypto.
so if you go to the next slide. So the light bulb moment for me was when, probably about a year ago, I don't know, things move fast. Someone used an AI agent to create a Twitter account, which is all right, okay, spouts a lot of shit. And then they gave it a crypto wallet and then funded the crypto wallet and said, let's go and do some trades. And then the crypto agent started trading a lot, making some money. Then people started sending it tokens and it started making its own token. Then its own token went up for several million. And to me, I was thinking, well, this is great because all of a sudden now this account has got agency, real agency, because it's got cash. Most things you do in the world, you need some money. It's crypto. I mean, I treat that as money. And it was really interesting because they hit a real brick wall because the guy had like £10 million in the Twitter AI agent, but couldn't draw it out because it had no identity. And then you start thinking, there's a few problems with this. And this sort of leads you on to then people thinking, really, to have agents, and I'm sure everyone here uses agents, right? That to make them actually useful, they need to be able to do real things and have agency. And we've obviously seen that with Claude Cowork and OpenClaw, where you're actually doing a little bit more than just having this sort of Web 1 moment where you feed an agent and it gives you an answer. So that was the real important thing for me. And it's a great story if you want to learn more about how that went crazy.
But first, let's cover why we think, or why some people might think, that agents need crypto and need blockchains, let's say, to make payments, right? You know, and if we look at traditional finance infrastructure, let's say, we've had two fintechs, I guess, that speak before us. So maybe we're on the slightly more Wild West side of that space versus the traditional banking. But we do know that payments is expensive, right? You need huge teams. It costs lots of money. Its card fees are quite high, very expensive for people to transact with. There's no ability yet to solve this. I am a person, I have an agent that wants to transact on my behalf. How do you bring this identity space together? We believe that crypto, again, can potentially solve that. You have problems with chargeback, you know, how atomic a transaction is, as well as like traditional things like SWIFT payments or ACH payments, very slow, cumbersome, error-prone. You know, this is very old-fashioned tech. And crypto and blockchain can solve some of that. And when you blend that with agentic payments, you can get some real benefits. It can be cheap. It can be very fast, instant settlement. You have very fast finality. You can't go back on a trade. Once it's confirmed on a blockchain, the agent has made a payment, you can't ring up your bank and say, I've been scammed. Whether you think that's a good feature or not, you know, leave that up to your own devices. But fundamentally, it does change the game a little bit, right? Lowest cost, speeds things up, makes things a little bit easier. And there's fundamentally less intermediaries between the chain of a traditional payment when we talk about this stuff. Why is it called X402? And that's what we're going to talk about today. So if you actually Google, even now on your phone, you go back to the draft HTTP 1 spec that was defined in about 1995, there was this response code, which was 402 payment required. And that was actually removed from the specification before it got to V1. And if you look through the sort of email lists from the developers or from the designers of this RFC in the sort of mid-90s, they talked about this being reserved for future. We don't know how payments is going to look on the web, right? So what we're going to do, we're going to take it out of the spec, we're going to solve this, we're going to solve it in the future, and that leads us to where we are today. Lots of intermediaries, lots of API keys, lots of subscriptions, lots of uploading your card number. Open banking then has tried to change it and sort of modernize this over the last 10, 15 years. And it's a bit of a mess, right? You know, but with lots of different people in between trying to solve this. And what we're going to talk about today is last year, Coinbase and Cloudflare launched something called X402, which tries to plug the gap of this missing payment protocol, this thing that was taken out in 1995, came back in 2025, so 30 years later. And the idea is this standardized way for a browser or fundamentally an agent to request a resource, be given the instruction of how to pay for that resource, and you return with a set of atomic payment instructions, which is fundamentally settled on a blockchain using typically stable coins, but in theory it could be anything.
Okay. So the original sin of the internet, as Jack once told me, Mark Andreessen said, was that payments wasn't built in to HTTP and the web. So this is how X402 is trying to build a protocol that fixes it. So really you have one agent here that wants to do something, sends this status code, it basically sends something back and says, this is how much it's going to cost to do this particular thing. You send the money, once you send the money, it gives you the thing, which is often data when you're on the web. Very fast, very cheap, and it should be pretty easy, and no one needs to sit in the middle, and you can give agents money and it can go away and do stuff. If you flick on, James, I'll talk about what people are already doing. So this is already happening. There's huge volumes of this sort of stuff underneath. Typical examples, if you think of use cases, is like data. The internet, a lot of the data is already out there and free, but there's still data around market data, request-based data, where you can use micropayments, pay very small amounts to return data back that's not publicly available. Obviously, when you get into shopping things, it'd be great if you could use X402 to buy things. Not many people are doing that yet, but no one's using credit cards with agents unless you're batshit crazy. And then what you're seeing as well is that in the X402 space, everyone's trying to lay these rails and sort of say, how's this going to work? What do we need to do? And you're also seeing other protocols being built on top of it by Google. Stripe just bought a company to do this, and MasterCard yesterday bought a company called BVNK for 1.8 billion. I don't know if you know. So they'll be using this, and everyone's trying to build this new layer of the protocol of the internet to handle payments. And Google itself released a paper that sits on top of this, which is like an agent-to-agent protocol. And as you saw from the talks earlier, this isn't about one agent. This is when swarms of agents communicate with other agents. And now we've just got to give them money so they can get on and do real tasks. It's great if you plan your holiday on like ChatGPT, but if it can't pay for anything, do anything, we're hitting these natural blockers. And I would say this is very nascent. Look, there's not many good use cases that are really happening by people day to day, but underneath the scenes, I think everyone's trying to prove this, see what's happening, what will people pay for.
Yeah, and I guess there's a real confluence of the last few years where stablecoin adoption within the space has started to take off, and you now have huge daily volumes, billions, trillions of dollars moving in stablecoins globally. You have a more regulatory friendly environment where people can now engage with this. And then the last sort of 12 to 2 years, we've got this sort of boom in AI and agents, and the confluence of those three things has emerged protocols like this to try and solve this gap of how does one agent buy something off another, in a trustless, permissionless, and cryptographically provable way that doesn't require a whole host of intermediaries. And it's not a solved space, the compliance, Dimitri talked about the compliance being a big part, there's still lots to be solved there. The identity space, how do I, as a holder of stable coins, give my agent access to those things and let the third party or the other agent know that I'm KYC'd and AML'd in place of that. So there's still things to do. It's a very early protocol, but at the same time, it's very fun to build on and play with. It's very easy, and I guess there's a lot of engineers in the crowd. I would, recommend checking out, looking at the blogs. Very simple to get going. Put some stuff behind some X402 paywalls, and see if you get any bites from the sort of open ecosystem that's emerging. And I guess what's part of the X04 protocol, or X02, sorry, is part of a wider agentic finance stack that's being built, from trying to solve this AML, KYC problem. How do I, as an individual who's KYC'd, give authority or permission to my agent to inform other agents that I'm a trusted partner, I'm not a terrorist, and I'm not part of the OFAC list and all that sort of stuff. Along with other topics like underwriting the trades, how do you plug it into supply chains, logistics? But it's very nascent. It's only really 6 months old, this sort of stuff, and there's going to be a lot more work to go.
I think one of the real use cases I've particularly found interesting is Cloudflare sort of sits in front of the internet. But obviously people crawl the internet all the time, so Cloudflare, one of their use cases is they want to make robots that crawl the internet pay for what sites. So they want to token gate all the sites by actually saying, okay, I'll let you go through and steal all that data, but you've got to pay for the privilege to do that. So that, I think that'll be a real use case where crawling, agent, access to particular resources is going to be like gatekept by Cloudflare and other entry points. A lot of these other ones, obviously we got ChatGPT to write the slides, so I don't agree with all of them. But I think there's real opportunities, we try and shoehorn it in where possible.
But it's true though, it's like LLM.text and robots.text, everyone knows you can circumvent it. If you're a bad actor, you're not going to follow it. But if you actually put some sort of fiscal paywall in front of it, at least you can monetize your own presence online and stop people taking your data for free, is the theory. And yeah, this is just a little slide to talk about X402. It's not the only person trying to do this, not the only protocol. So about 2 weeks ago, Stripe launched their own blockchain, fundamentally a payments blockchain based on agentic payments called Tempo. Big backers, big infrastructure, and they've launched something called the machine payments protocol. It's very similar to X402, but their flavor of this, how does agents talk and buy and transact in a permissionless, cryptographically provable way? Visa have got their own, Stripe have got some like traditional rails. And in theory, you could have your OpenAI sort of operator model, launch browsers, log into your bank, set up payment cards, all that sort of stuff. But as Andy says, that comes with a lot of risk, a lot of problems. Do you really want to give them your credit cards? When the model that we're talking about here can allow you to ring fence, safely give permission to certain agents to do certain tasks. So you give much more fine-grained control without basically giving up your card details.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the technology is quite complementary. And if you look at the stacks, like X402 might sit at the bottom as more of a protocol level, and then MPP might sit on top of it. And then there's been protocols being built so you can build trust levels in agents. There's been some been built so you can create a job and the agents can compete and put money in escrow, and if it does a good job, then you'll pay the agent or not. So I think all of these, but if you look at the names, there's no doubt this is going to happen in my mind. It's like Visa, Coinbase, Google, Stripe, BlockRocket, all the big boys are getting involved in this.
Yeah, but the classic one is like meme generator. If I could, I've got some great meme generating capabilities. You can fire me some natural language. I generate you a meme, but it'll cost you 5 cents to do that. You could paywall that. It would be a very easy thing to set up, low friction, instant, no payment processor, no fees, no chargebacks, none of that stuff to deal with. So yeah, it's very nascent though, I guess, is fundamentally, but very interesting. So you should go check it out.
And no one uses it yet, but it's going to be massive.
And that's it, really. That's just a little overview of X402.